to Alternative. My name's William, and I'm here to share my top 10 favorite albums of 2024. I went through about 150 albums this year, and these are the 10 that left the biggest mark on me. Number 10, X Ambassadors, their latest album, Townie. It came out in April, and it's been a really special album for me this year. I have not been happy with most of their music throughout the 2010s after their first EP in 2013, which held absolute gems in Unconsolable and Down With Me, two of my all-time favorite songs. I found their stuff throughout the 2010s after that much more stadium pop and not up my alley. But this new album is a wonderful breath of fresh air for the band. They've stripped down their sound. They're going with a much softer, subdued approach, and it's a reflective album. It's looking back at their roots, at where they came from. And there's just so much more heart to this. I'm feeling the heart in this band for the first time in years. While not the biggest hook power to these songs, they really impress me with the mood and just the overall tastefulness of these songs. Rashad is a notable standout, a heartbreaking song reflecting on the passing of a classmate from elementary school for Sam Harris, the lead singer, and it is just a heartbreaker of a song. Also, Follow the Sound of My Voice, another absolute heart-melting track. My number 9 album of the year comes from a German emo punk hardcore band called Shoreline with their album To Figure Out. Now, this band has under 20,000 monthly listeners, and it's a shame because I feel like they deserve a hell of a lot more attention with this stuff. They're on Pure Noise Records, a pretty well-known label in the scene, but they haven't quite been able to break into the North American audience, I suppose. But for fans of the emo pop punk sound, very much worth checking out. They're much more punk emo than hardcore, though they do have this hardcore edge. Their vocalist has a lot of grit, and I'm not the most gritty music listener. I like my softer melodies. I'm a very clean sung hook type of guy, but I love this band for being able to balance the aggressive, harsh vocals with some fantastic hooks. These songs are fast-paced, lots of fun, great hooks, and there's some really good messages behind their lyrics. These guys have something to say. My number 8 album of the year comes from Scottish alternative rock band Twin Atlantic with their latest album, Meltdown. Twin Atlantic's been around for a bunch of years now, but they just don't seem to be gaining much popularity. At this point, under 200,000 monthly listeners, so not too bad, but this album I'm seeing from streams on Spotify, the most one song has is, 600,000 streams. So this album, these songs deserve some more attention, and that's what I'm here for. I love these guys. This album is just full of energy, big, in-your-face, anthemic sing-alongs. Very Scottish. Man, the vocalist of this band is about as Scottish as it gets, and if that turns you off, then it turns you off. But I say it just adds to their charm and personality. Stuck in a Car With You was a single last year that scraped onto my top 100 songs of 2023. Nothing else from this album making my top 100 this year, but I wanted to acknowledge them all in my top 10 albums because from start to finish, this album is just a blast. The closer, a bit of a slow finish, but it doesn't take away from the 1 through 10 punch of every other song. At number 7, Neck Deep with their self-titled album, released early in the year. It came out back in January, and from the get-go, I was just like, man, this album is very much a contender for my top 10 of the year. Super solid, start to finish, and while Neck Deep can be a little abrasive for my tastes, and this album especially, they just go hard with all of these songs. But similarly to Shoreline and Twin Atlantic, they're able to really go while at the same time just holding those hooks and keeping me invested. Heartbreak of the Century was in my top 10 songs of 2023. Definitely the peak of this album, but the rest of it holds up wonderfully. 10 songs, a quick 33-minute listen. This is some very high-quality pop-punk music. Coming in at number 6, Beach Weather with Melt, a late year release, came out end of October. Beach Weather, I would never have expected this band to even be in consideration for my top 10 albums of the year. The last time I reviewed an album from them, just 2023, not as far back as I remember. Pineapple Sunrise, I found the album to be really dull. Like, you guys are cool, but the coolness is overshadowing any real melodic substance for me. They never hooked me in. I'm like, cool sound, but no real feeling for me. But this new album, I'd say, is the perfect balance of their cool alt indie pop sound, but with some actual substantial hooks. A very cool, very enjoyable album. Deadbeat Blues has made it onto my top 100 this year. A wonderfully fresh and exciting song. But yeah, start to finish, a very enjoyable album. Kicking off my top 5 albums of the year, Tawa Bird with American Hero. Speaking of cool music, Tawa Bird is just this indie alternative sound that I find so damn cool. I love her energy. Has a bit of that nonchalant delivery while delivering just these really perky, fun sing-alongs. Wild Heart was a big one for me last year, and some other absolute gems with Sorry Sorry, FML. Deep Cut has made it onto my top 100 this year. This Isn't Me and Mayflower, a couple other big standouts as well. Such an enjoyable listen, guaranteed good time. Check her out. My number 4 album of the year, I'm very happy to be able to say that this album is genuinely a top 10 album of the year for me. Hippocampus with their latest album, Flood. When I caught on to Hippocampus in about 2017, I thought they were super cool, and I want to like the cool music. I want to like this cool indie stuff, but it just went over my head. I didn't find any real hook substance to keep me coming back. But over the years, I've been liking the direction they've been heading. They kind of went into a bit of a country-leaning sound not too long ago. Their vocalist has a wonderful, wonderful sound and very much is suited for a country sound. But this album is the perfect balance between more of their indie alternative side and a bit of that country-leaning side as well. And it's all combined into this just really, really strong outing here. The songs hold a lot of class, a lot of grace, a lot of patience. No big hits here, just these very tasteful, easy listening, suave songs. Man, the vocals, the production is wonderful. And it's an album like this that isn't the big pop rock energy that I'm instinctively pulled into, but it's just so classy and cool and just smooth, and at the same time holding enough of that hook power to really make me feel like this is one of the best albums of the year. This song, Brand New, has made my top 100 of the year. Fantastic song, but and there are a few on here. Corduroy, Flood, the title track, Tooth Fairy, I see that's a pretty popular song, but those few didn't really land with me too well. But they all are all still very much part of this tasteful sound, and they don't really take away from the rest of these gems. The album also comes to a fantastic final stretch with the final 3, Forget It, Closer, and I Got Time. Really the icing on the cake of this album to cement it as one of the year's best. Now, my top 3 albums of the year. These 3 albums all came out very early on in the year. And maybe that's part of this bias is why they're now my top 3 albums of the year. I've had them around for the longest, but I don't sit with albums too long. I move on to the next thing. While these have been in my life the longest, it's not like I've been listening to them on repeat. Number 3, for example, Alkaline Trio with Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs, released end of January. Alkaline Trio I've never been crazy about. I've been aware of for several years. They are a very notable name in the punk scene, but I was a late comer to the band, and this is the first album from them that's really blown me away. But none of these songs made my top 100 most streamed of the year, so it shows me that, okay, it's not like I was coming back to these songs all year long. But when I do revisit the album now, the whole vibe and feel they've created with this package is unlike much else this year, and I just really admire the overall feel of these songs. Bad Time was a single from last year that I somehow, late last year, and I guess it just didn't jump out enough to make it into my top 100 of 2023. I wish I could add it to my top 100 this year, but I stick to my rules, and it's just such a fun song, an absolutely exhilarating song that you have to dive into. The verses are wild, just so much fun. The mid-album stretch of Scars, Break, and Shake With Me, and then into the single Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs, the title track. Fabulous. Love them. There is the penultimate Broken Down in a Time Machine, track number 10, which I do think is the standout worst song of the album. It just doesn't hold the same power that most of these other songs do, that every one of these other songs does, actually. But it's still solid enough. And then we do get the finale song, Teenage Heart, which is my favorite song here. It's made my top 100 this year. And what a finale. What a finale that really just, again, cements this album as top tier. So good. All right, my number 2 favorite album of the year, about as rock heavy as we get on this list. Dead Poets Society with their album Fission. Another one that dropped on the same day as the Alkaline Trio album, January 26, and a band that I caught on to them with their album before this, briefly, didn't really spend much time with it, and so this, to me, is officially my debut with the band, and oh boy, they absolutely killed it. This is my type of rock music. Heavy, the guitar is so crunchy and juicy and wonderful, and you get a lot of bands that, you know, in the heavier scene that have great guitar work, but the hook power just doesn't do it, or maybe the vocals aren't quite there for me. This band, if you're a Nothing But Thieves fan, I would highly recommend. The vocalist, I think, is very much comparable to Nothing But Thieves. And so, you know, he's got that amazing clean sound, a little more gritty than Nothing But Thieves, I'd say. And but the hook power is through the roof. The first 6 songs, the first one's a little bit of an intro, but tracks 2 with Running in Circles, a single from last year, that was just incredible. Hurt, How Could I Love You, I Hope You Hate Me, all capping off with Yuto. Brilliant. Yuto, woo, a wonderful song. That song is on my top 100 this year, but it doesn't stop there. Tipping Point is the mid-album slow burn that is just shows that they can do a slower song. It's emotional, powerful, wonderful. Number 8, LA Queen, another song that I was considering for my top 100 this year. Wickedly infectious song. Then we get to tracks 9 and 10, Hard to Be God and 81 Tons, which are both, for me, they're cooler and heavier than they are absolutely invigoratingly catchy, but they're very cool, and they just continue the vibe of the album. And then they lead us to My Condition, and that song is in my top 10 songs of the year. That song was pretty groundbreaking for me this year. It is actually a bit of a standalone on this album when it comes to the energy. It's much catchier, much more pop indie leaning than anything else here. I remember when I first heard it, I thought it was some indie pop band, and I was shocked when I found out, oh, this is Dead Poets Society, much heavier sound that I'm used to from these guys. And so it's really cool to hear them explore a catchier, even though all these other heavy songs are super catchy as well. This one just definitely has more of that indie light vibes to it, and absolutely fabulous song. That to me is the finale of this album, though they do stretch it out 2 more songs, which I find are a little more experimental, very cool, but not hooking me in as much, but they're still not doing anything to take this album away from being one of the year's best. And the album that I've decided to call my number 1 of the year, a indie pop band that you probably haven't heard of, but if you had, please comment, let me know. The Ivy with their album A Door Still Open. It's my first album with the band. I remember catching on to them sometime last year. Their song Street Dog stood out to me. It was the first song that really stood out to me. It made a top 10 of the month last year at one point, but little did I know just how much they were going to stand out to me into this year. So they released this album early on in the year, February, and man, it's just full of indie pop hits. These songs are soft and sweet and oh so catchy, snappy, just chill songs that you can sit back to, but also really feel and just sink into. The closer, Entangled, was a big one for me when this album came out. It's loaded with good singles in Good Faith, Broad Shoulders, Tower of Terror, Gum's Lost Flavor. But the song that's really managed to stand above the rest for me is 3. The song 3, not a single, just a deep cut on the album, and it has made my top 100 this year. And I would say that's just the best example of how damn good these guys are. And I thought this album was just a fitting number 1 for my year in music here in 2024. Well, I'm glad I got to talk about those. Thank you for checking this out. I'll be back soon to talk about some of my favorite songs of the year as well. Till then, I'll see you next time.